First, Amanda, Carolyn, so many other people at ConsenSys, Jesse, Rich, Patty, etc., all the people that helped, worked their butts off to put this event on. Thank you so much. It's truly brilliant. And thank all of you for coming, friends, colleagues, family. Thank you very much for being part of this. You made it awesome. So I've asked to do a couple things. I've been asked to do a couple things before I launch into the meat of this. First, ConsenSys has formed something called ConsenSys Academy, which is a multifaceted educational program. It focuses on executive level, analyst level, developer level training. We are kicking off something called the developer program, and we are encouraging developers to apply for this. There may be travel involved, there may be jobs involved, there may be certification involved. Check it out, please, at academy.consensys.net. Amanda asked me to A, give a speech at the end of this event, and B, put together a little bit of a summary of what I saw at this event today. It turns out quite mind-blowingly that as I wrote my talk over the last 2 days, I really summarized this event. So I will just launch into it, and I think you'll all hear the resonances. So my background is mostly in technology with a smattering of finance more recently. I studied electrical engineering and computer science. I couldn't understand why so many of my roommates and friends were econ majors. So Mike, JV, Dave, Rich. Science and technology was the only pursuit that made sense to me, and I felt the financial world was, at best, mundane. I was a computer nerd, grew up on Star Trek, read a decent amount of cyberpunk and sci-fi. It was obvious to me that the geeks would inherit the earth. Fast forward 15 years and I started a transition to the world of finance. I finally became aware of, and perhaps even started to understand a little bit, what I then thought of as the big game: finance, global finance, economics, and geopolitics. I worked at Goldman for a little while, and also with a software firm down on Broad Street, right by the New York Stock Exchange and beside the old Goldman mothership. One day on my way to work, I exited the subway, looked up into the beautiful sunny sky, and saw charred pieces of paper raining down everywhere. After looking up for a few seconds, my eyes started to burn. Micronized jet fuel, perhaps. Curious fool that I was, I walked towards the event. I was walking towards an area that would later be called Ground Zero. It was September 11, 2001. I was about to be chased down the street by the pyroclastic flow that results when a very large building collapses on itself and effectively disintegrates. In a very big way, my world, everyone's world, changed on that day. Growing up, I and everyone I knew trusted society and the structures that we found ourselves embedded in. The 60s ushered in an early wake-up call with respect to the military-industrial complex, but then we hit snooze. The 70s ushered in disco. That ultimately proved fairly harmless. Tom Wolfe called the 70s the me decade, but I think we perfected selfishness in the 80s. Many called the 90s a great decade. I think that is partly because science and tech and general knowledge dissemination and communication took such tremendous leaps as our communications meshes and the internet began to ramify. The internet and mobile phones began to shrink the planet quite dramatically for many. 9/11 to me represented a loss of innocence, or perhaps a loss of naivete. And the many learnings and disclosures in the decade or so following 9/11 laid bare the complex and often unhealthy context that we were actually embedded in. Many discovered that it was folly to trust all those structures that we implicitly felt had our best interest at heart. Politicians, bankers, pharma companies, insurers, car companies, healthcare organizations, they were all focused on making a buck, and really, they couldn't care less about your well-being. Perhaps the fake news phenomenon is actually more honest. Perhaps it was always fake news. to a significant degree, but we're just labeling it more accurately of late. 9/11 woke up many people. I and so many others became more interested in monetary theory, esoteric aspects of finance like mortgage-backed securities and collateralized debt obligations, geopolitics, hidden power structures. I did enough research back then and developed a deep enough understanding of the global economy and financial world to get quite depressed about it. I felt we were living in a global society and economy that was figuratively, literally, and morally bankrupt. 9/11 ushered in nearly a decade of aware people trying to wake others up from their slumber of innocence or their robotic existences in the major edifices of society. These people were trying to occupy everything just to get the message out, to get the message across. I'm normally not one to speak out at that point in my life, even started to send friends and family written thoughts and updates on events and concerns that I had. I was confident that our economy and society were in a slow cascading collapse, and I only saw two outcomes. Central bankers would kick the can down the road for as long as possible, enabling the enormous debt in the system to be paid off with greatly devalued currency in a devaluation race to the bottom. This had the potential to stifle growth and broad prosperity for decades. Or more likely, some nonlinear collapse would bring great hardship, a more profound global depression than anything previous. I did hypothesize some possible magical escapes that would drive tremendous growth in the economy. Free or very cheap energy, drastically reduced taxes, the ability to teleport anywhere on the globe instantly, or more gloomily, World War III. Planning for the worst, I took a trip with my brother to Peru and Ecuador and even put in a bid on some land that could serve as an escape if necessary. I visited my friend Mike Novogratz one night to share my concerns and asked him if he was interested in being part of formulating an escape plan. To his credit, A, he was not concerned, and B, he indicated that if shit were to hit the fan, he would want to face it with friends and family here in good old America. Mike is a patriot, and he would do what was required to fix the situation at home. And so it went. Later, in early 2011, I read the Bitcoin white paper written by Satoshi Nakamoto, person or group. I had the epiphany that so many in our space had. Decentralization was a game changer. Satoshi had invented a mechanism that could enable us to build far better alternatives to the legacy systems. Alternative structures for economic, social, and political systems that could exist on a foundation that could not be improperly manipulated. There was no longer any reason to get the message out. There was no reason to consider exit or escape. We could now focus on building better systems for a better future. That moment, my attitude turned from disillusioned back to my natural state, which is idealistic, optimistic, generally positive. I jumped into the Bitcoin system informally. Basically, I read everything for a couple of years, but I didn't go to any events or really meet anybody in the space. When I read the white paper by Vitalik Buterin describing the Ethereum platform, it crystallized for me all the potential with which I felt the Bitcoin white paper was pregnant. Bitcoin taught us that we had a new paradigm that we could use to build better systems. And now with Ethereum, Vitalik showed us in some detail a scalable method for building systems that would change everything. I jumped in completely. Decentralization as an organizing principle. Our society is structured by and run by many centralized entities, companies, governments, some of which are covert. This works reasonably well and has brought us very far, but there is tremendous room for improvement. Top-down command and control as an organizing principle has enabled us to make tremendous gains globally as a society. It is an optimal architecture when communication and decision-making are slow and expensive. But top-down command and control has serious weaknesses. Decisions are made at the top as far as possible from where the real data and the real expertise are located. There's a tendency to silo information both laterally and vertically. Your boss gives you info on a need-to-know basis. You give your boss and peers only the info that you think serves you best, not what is best for the situation. You certainly don't share freely with your peers in other branches of the hierarchy. They might move up faster than you. All this is done to grow and consolidate power and to avoid being usurped. Finally, hierarchies are easily calcified and brittle. They don't adapt to novel situations very fluidly. Top-down command and control has served us very well. It has enabled us to build a great civilization. But importantly, it has brought us to the point technologically where we're enabled to build a decentralized society. Over the past few decades, we've wrapped the world in layers of communication networks. 9 years ago, Satoshi made a major breakthrough in computer science, enabling all actors on a blockchain platform to come to a decision within 10 minutes, even if up to half of those actors are malicious. Ethereum has pared that down to 14 seconds and very soon 4 seconds. In this context in which communications are ubiquitous, instant, and cheap, and decision-making by consensus can be cheap and rapid, an organizing principle relying on consensus among a richly communicating horizontal group of actors provides the most effective paradigm. It will take time, but once built out, flatter, decentralized economic, social, and political systems will be more effective, more fluid, and far less subject to corruption. Decentralization in horizontal infrastructure implies disintermediation. Intermediation is a great thing. It's great when it adds value to a transaction. It's great when it adds information, reduces friction. But intermediaries tend to impose themselves into a transaction and then increase the spread between the value that they extract and the value that they add to that transaction. Blockchain provides a secure infrastructure and a trustworthy infrastructure, an infrastructure where all actors can trust that the system just works properly. All of that is realized on public blockchain in a fully decentralized peer-to-peer context, a radically free market. So a radically free market with trustful mechanisms provides a very low barrier to entry for businesses. That's going to serve as a force for universal disintermediation. It's going to shrink the values that are extracted in value chains, both horizontally and vertically, so that many intermediaries are squeezed out or are moved to extracting appropriate amounts of value. We're moving from a world of many silos that don't communicate well with one another to one of fluid integration. One simple way to view Ethereum is as a next-generation database system, one that supports collaboration as a first-class principle. Because all actors on Ethereum have direct view of the data and programs on the system, all can trust that no minority set of actors can improperly manipulate the system. You can share infrastructure with a competitor and be certain that competitor can't cheat the system. Up until the advent of Ethereum, businesses built their information systems on database technology that constrained the information systems to be siloed. This kind of architecture reinforces an us versus them, business versus customer mindset. A sea change has recently begun globally where instead of businesses building their own information systems, industries, sectors, value chains, governments, and regulators can all get together and build shared, non-redundant infrastructure that will facilitate fluid interoperation within and across industries. Since Ethereum is the only blockchain that can subserve use cases on public blockchain, as well as on private permissioned implementations of the technology, Ethereum is uniquely positioned to move our society towards a more fluid, more collaborative infrastructure. Going natively digital will enable us to create more fluid, frictionless systems. Thousands of years of technology has been built on analog foundations. The fundamental elements of society, trust, agreements, identity, reputation, money, have all been realized with analog technologies. Things like paper, dyes, inks, law enforcement, jurisprudence, force. Analog systems have built-in frictions. Clearing and settling some transactions can take days or weeks. True, money, laws, and contracts can all take on digital form, but these are just digital representations of analog forms. They are not natively digital. And analog forms possess frictions that slow our interactions and our economy. We're just embarking on the process of rendering all of these elements in natively digital formats. Smart contracts, blockchain-based programs, make trust among counterparties virtually automatic and virtually guaranteed. Any sort of contract can be built on this platform. This enables natively digital trust and agreements. Native digital money in the form of Ether or other value tokens enables frictionless, censorship resistance, borderless payments. For example, we're working on an international interbank transfer and payment platform with a global bank that reduces the clearing and settlement of transactions from days to 10 seconds. And native digital money can be embedded directly in the escrow section of an agreement that is realized as a smart contract on the blockchain. A near frictionless economy will enable extremely rapid growth, probably exponential for a while. We may be able to grow our way out of the current slow cascading collapse. Which brings us to identity. Identity's broken. In the developed world, we spray critical elements of our identity all over the internet and other information systems. Service providers request it as much as they can get of it, so they can monetize it in various ways, often without applying enough of those profits to adequately secure it. So in addition to Mark, Larry, and Sergey owning and monetizing your identity, communications, and other private aspects of you, countless criminal hackers gain access to this data on a regular basis, causing further monetary and other damage to you and perhaps family, friends, and associates. In the developing world, the situation is actually worse. In excess of 2 billion people don't have banking relationships, and similar numbers don't have state-issued ID. So while they may be able to transact in their local context, this renders them non-citizens in the larger regional and global economies. But there is a solution that was never possible before now. For the first time in history, we have an infrastructure that is an appropriate substrate for a global identity system. It is the Ethereum blockchain and network. Imagine a centralized database, that holds information on all of the world's inhabitants. This is a scary situation because it represents a valuable prize for well-resourced interests to attempt to wrest control of. Often those well-resourced interests have lots of patience. Even if it is an excellently designed centralized database system, it would be sad indeed if certain groups developed the ability to erase or modify people's identities and reputations. Only a system that is decentralized in its control is impervious to being co-opted by nefarious actors. Only blockchain systems meet that criterion fully. Ethereum is the most powerful of such blockchain systems. Publicly and permissionlessly accessible from anywhere in the world, it represents a shared global database. It is fully programmable, it is configurably private and confidential, or transparent when appropriate. Its entries are non-repudiable. Once written and committed, data cannot be erased by anyone, including all of the nation-state authorities. Note that data can be updated on programmable blockchains like Ethereum, but traces of the older data remain unexpungible. If you own a piece of data, only you can update that data. Finally, it is veridical. Veridical, of or pertaining to the truth. Blockchains currently have the characteristic that all actors on the system have access to all the data and all the business logic, the programs that can act on the data. So every actor on a public or private Ethereum platform can be assured that no subset of actors can improperly manipulate the data or business logic, even if up to 50% of the actors on the system are malicious. So, veridical, a word we've co-opted in this context, means everyone, even competitors, can trust this shared infrastructure, this shared source of truth. Note also that these public blockchain systems are likely to stick around and evolve for decades. So unlike a traditional centrally controlled database, the data will almost certainly be around for a very long time. Identity is usually managed by identity providers. These are government agencies like the Social Security Administration or the Department of Motor Vehicles, entities like banks, and increasingly and profoundly, services like Facebook, Google, Twitter, LinkedIn. But there's a new option for identity that upends the legacy approach and puts all the power in the hands of the people, the actual owners of those identities or those aspects of identity. It is called self-sovereign identity, and it enables 7.4 billion of us on this planet to establish control of our own blockchain-based identity on the Ethereum blockchain. At our company ConsenSys, we built Uport, a self-sovereign identity system. Users can establish their own identity on the blockchain and control it from their phone, browser, or other device. A piece of software called a proxy smart contract is established on the blockchain to represent your persistent identity. Other pieces of software, one on the blockchain and one on your phone, enable you to securely control that persistent identity. The proxy smart contract is a software construct that serves as an informational container for two kinds of things. The first is reputational attributes. These are things about you that you fully control. And the second is reputational attestations, also called verifiable claims. These are things about you or your conduct that other people say and control. So you can upload an attribute into this identity data container. Email address, Facebook URL, copy of your state-issued ID. Other attributes that you might want to upload include financial information or health information. Is this crazy? It should cause you to wonder if all these personal attributes you're uploading are secure. They are. They're all uploaded in an encrypted form and are selectively disclosable by the owner when the owner deems it appropriate. Selective here means exactly what is disclosed as well as to whom. Once you have blockchain-based ID, you can take advantage of a new kind of single sign-on that you control, not Google, not Facebook. Applications will enable you to maintain your own login credentials and personal profiles. These elements will no longer be stealable from the poorly secured websites, and the risk to the app provider will decrease dramatically. A simple handshake will happen behind the scenes between the web service or web app you're accessing in your browser or mobile interface. And you will be informed by your U-port of everything you need to know before approving transactions with your fingerprint. In addition to attributes, U-port identity can serve as a container for reputational attestations. Anytime you interact with a blockchain-based, internet-based, or even legacy economy service, your conduct in these transactions or interactions can be attested to by your counterparties in those situations. So if you are borrowing, lending, or repaying on our Ether loan platform, or engaging in crowdfunding or equity crowdfunding on our Wayfund platform, or playing poker on our virtual poker platform, or working collaboratively on a software project using our boardroom governance tool. And eventually even, perhaps your utility companies will attest to the fact that you're paying your bills on time. Your counterparties in each of these transactions or interactions can attest to your conduct with attestations linked directly to related transactions on the blockchain. Each of these attestations enables you to build a persistent, portable reputation attached to your identity. Lots of us in this room have persistent, portable reputation that we can use to our economic advantage, a bank statement, for instance, but many on the planet don't. U-port enables them to establish their identity and then leverage their social context to establish reputation that nobody can take away from them. A woman in Somalia can get on the internet to create a U-port for herself. Her friends and neighbors can do the same and attest to the fact that she is a solid member of their community. Perhaps she borrowed and paid back a small amount. She could ask the lender to attest to this. With this persistent portable reputation, she could perhaps reach across the internet to a lender on the Ether loan platform and get a microloan for a small piece of business equipment that she could use to start a business. Pay back that loan and she can get another to grow the business and bootstrap her enfranchisement in the emerging decentralized global economy. And many of the community members around her can do the same, enabling economic growth in the region. The D-Web, the decentralized World Wide Web. Average consumers will never use the blockchain. They will never know what the blockchain is. They will continue to use the web and will appreciate the better architecture because it will enable new and better ways of interacting. The internet and World Wide Web were conceived and implemented as decentralized technologies. Commerce and the drive for efficiency broke that symmetry and caused the clumping of the web into large siloed client-server systems like Facebook, Google, Netflix, and more. And don't get me wrong, I do love all of those services. It can be said that the internet, as awesome as it is broken. Ethereum enables pure and complete decentralization. We can deliver applications that have their front end served from decentralized storage systems like IPFS and Swarm, and the back end is fully decentralized, running on thousands of nodes currently on the Ethereum network. Certainly some centralization will remain or creep back over time, but the foundation has been finally laid for true, durable decentralization. The World Wide Web architecture is currently implemented as server machines feeding client browsers, Currently, you have access to elements of your identity through that web browser. We are moving into the era of the decentralized web, Web 3, where you control the elements of your identity on the client side, your side of the browser. Web 1 was text and images, mostly used by scientists. Web 2 added interactivity and then mobile and social. Web 3 turns the client-server architecture into an underlying peer-to-peer architecture. Instead of a web service being the business and you being either the customer, in the case of Netflix, or the product, in the case of Facebook and Google, Web 3 enables open platforms and end-sided markets. For example, we built a prediction markets or wisdom markets platform called Gnosis and identified at least 12 business roles that people or companies can inhabit to create an emerging ecosystem on that platform. None of these roles will be an all-powerful gatekeeper. Identity is the new browser. On the decentralized web, the browser is intimately associated with your identity in a way that you completely control. Decentralized social networking will enable you to connect directly to feeds, publishers, and attention markets, formerly called advertising networks. So if you want to spend some of your attention on an ad, the advertiser should spend some of their money on you, without Mark in the middle, collecting it all. D-society, the decentralized society. So this brings us back full circle, back to society. So much of society is organized or realized on the internet. So if the internet becomes profoundly decentralized, so will go society. Financial, economic, education, governance, energy, and so many other systems are being designed and realized by ConsenSys and other companies in the decentralization space in adherence to this fundamentally different and almost always better organizing principle, decentralization. I've heard so many times, nearly daily, over the past few years, that people are working to change the world. It's become a trite and cringe-worthy line to me often. But if you stop and think about it, it's actually pretty awesome. The ethos of the current set of active cohorts is very positive. Were the 90s great? Perhaps. But there wasn't widespread focus on making the world a better place as it is now, as we see now. So it is a great honor to be active in this period. Many times people have said to me or other ConsenSys members something like, you guys are going to dominate, you guys are going to take over the world. The whole point of decentralization, the Ethereum Project, and the work we do at ConsenSys is the exact opposite. We're working to enable the planet to better organize itself, and we are building technology that we believe will make it impossible for any subset of actors to take over the world. Welcome to the decentralized future. Thank you.